Look, I was wrong about Candy Flory, but I don't
He's
think
saying
I'm
it on the record.
I don't think I'm wrong. I really think this one has a lot of potential.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Volume 1, the Anime and Manga Podcast, where we usually review the first volume of a brand new manga each week, but it's another, what we're calling Volume Jump episode, where we give our thoughts on new series, recent releases, short, sweet, get a vibe, get a sense, see if it's something that you want to get into yourself or that you want us to cover more of. My name is Josh Ottoman Michaels.
You couldn't help yourself.
I couldn't. And today, as always, I'm joined by
Megan Milf Perrine.
Oh,
Cody Mangaka Ducker.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like we said, we are going to be covering just sort of generally what this series is about. Ottoman, it's not out, I think, officially as of this recording, but it is. You are able to find it online. Cody brought this series to our attention. Cody, do you want to talk about what initially drew you to this series?
I really like the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I liked like the way it uses color in it too. I thought I don't know, it just looked fun. And then it's a guy wearing glasses, so I'm always and it looked like it was going to be I keep forgetting the name of, but the things that like Power Rangers and like the writers are.
I want to say Saitama, but
yeah, but that's One Punch Man. Yeah, something like that. I was like, I haven't actually like read a manga.
Saito. I think it's Saito.
Saito. I was like, if that's that, like, well, I want to try one of these stories, and then I read like I saw a bit where it's like, it's a guy who wants to be a mangaka. I'm like, is it like this gonna be a fantasy in his head that he's having? And then it immediately opens with revealing it's not just a silly story.
Yeah. You've called this before, and I think you're absolutely right. After reading the first chapter, especially, you've called it Jagan meets, what was it again?
Kaiju number 8. A little bit of kaiju, a little bit of Parasite, like Megan said.
Yeah, I was like, this is Parasite meets Jagan, like to the max, especially the first chapter.
A little bit of Venom, a little bit of. Also, it could be Venom meets Green Lantern.
Yeah.
This is a good example. Megan was talking about how being similar to a lot of things isn't bad as long as you pull it off well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this what we all agree on for sure is that it is definitely reminiscent of Jagan. And so I think if Jagan is a manga series that you like, then you will like this.
It's almost anti-Jagan though.
Sure.
It's almost the exact opposite. Even in like, this affects other people and like what affects them.
Yeah, it's definitely more lighthearted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Completely.
But, I mean, there is something similar about them for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that, talking about the art too, and the mangaka, by the way, I have his name pulled up. I'm going to butcher it, but out of respect, it's Kanazawa Shinosuke. Sorry for mispronouncing that, but he is someone who has, done a couple series prior to this. Nothing really that's like, broken through into the mainstream, but Ottoman might be it.
I think I think it has something for everyone, especially like the more it goes on.
Not only, and we're going to talk about just sort of like I said, vibe and everything too, and what to expect kind of going into this without giving any major plot points or specific details away. But just to talk about the art for a second, the art was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I really liked it a lot.
There were a couple of splash pages where it was like, that's like a whole cityscape. That looks really good.
Yeah, no, and like definitely, like I said, like it definitely impressed me. Like the intentional scenes that were supposed to be like really detailed and well drawn were, and the other ones that didn't have to be weren't. Because sometimes in the beginning it felt kind of like, not basic, but very just like manga. And then it started like opening up into like when we like meet other characters and like the situations arise and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really good. Like there's a train scene. I won't give too much away, but I was like, that's when I was in.
That's what felt Jagan.
That's when I was, yeah.
And I like just the different way it was executed. Where, there's always the issue of like, he just has a handle on this. Like, no, he's like riding back seat and like watching this happen. He kind of gets hit by an isekai bus too, and it's like it felt like it was really just like if you throw in everything, it becomes a completely different thing because he gets like chosen by an entity, and then a truck hits him, and I felt like that. Like I don't know. I felt like that was like as like a joke. I don't know. It felt like to add to the humor of like what else can happen in an origin story.
Yeah, and the gore is really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Which is which is what I think it did a really good job in the beginning. But you see like the art style and it's like colored in, and you're just like, oh, this is like nice. Or like at an office, and then you get like a hard like black and white like that edge scratchy drawings of like gore, and it immediately sets you up for like what kind of story this is. Just like light and heartfelt, but then also there is legitimate like action going
and
on.
the designs of there are, this is like what you find out in the first couple panels, aliens, the designs of them look very, very cool. Also, it was really nice to see, we just covered a Yashima in the first chapter and how there was a protagonist in that wanted to be a manga protagonist. And here again, there is a character who wants to be a mangaka in a manga. But, what I think makes this so special and so good is that it is at its core a depiction of a healthy relationship and a couple and where one of them has dreams and aspirations and where the other is not only supportive, but, willing to make sacrifices. It is so refreshing to see that done so well and to have like a wife character who is just a good wife and a good partner,
and he's a good husband,
and he's a great husband.
It's a two-way street. Like it so many times a romance in a story is just considered like they like each other, but like this, like I believe it. They're great, and how they're like, oh, he thinks about her all the time. He can't wait to see her, and it's like I believe that based on how they are together.
And it's not that they're like lovey-dovey necessarily all over each other all the time, but you can just tell like their communication, like when they're talking about things later on, you're just like, oh my God, this is insane to see.
Yeah, and she gets a moment of her own of like being like, oh, she's also like pretty cool. Like that was a solid moment for her.
Yeah.
In like a stressful situation.
Yeah. What are some other highlights or some other things that maybe stood out to you, Megan? Because I want to ask Cody later. Cody has read a little bit farther. Currently, as of this recording, there are about 12 chapters out. So Cody's going to give us a little sense of where the story goes or what we can expect, again, without giving anything away. But for just like someone who is looking for first impressions or what they can expect jumping into it, is there anything else that you thought stood out to you?
I mean, when I was really sold, like I said, was definitely the moment that he does take a backseat to the alien creature thing, because he's on that train and it just looks so cool, and that's when I was on board for sure. And then obviously the cliffhanger ending in chapter 1, I was like, okay, this is what we're doing, I guess.
You want to talk about a really full first chapter. This is full, and while Yashiman is getting a lot of hype because, yes, it is on the Shonen Jump app and everything now, and it's from a mangaka who is coming off of another successful series, part of me felt like more connected to this first chapter.
Yeah, I agree.
Yashima.
I agree. I really enjoyed this much more as for a new series.
Yeah.
Because it didn't, there's humor in it, but it didn't feel like, oh, it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what can people expect? Because you have read, I think you've read all 12 that are out currently, right?
I went up to 8, and then I was like, let me not get too deep in yet until...
Yeah. Well, where does it go, and does it stay consistent in what we've seen so far?
I was really excited where it went. I was like, oh, this is that feeling of like reading Kaiju number 8. Of like reading, Dan where it's just like you see these characters, you're introduced to more characters. It's just like, oh, that's so fun. That guy is so cool. And then like you see a fight, and it's like, oh, that's brutal. And then it's like the moral of the story as it goes on, and it's just like, oh, this has not been done before. What he's powered by is like, I'm like, I don't even know like if it's a spoiler, but I'll say it's heartwarming.
Yeah.
What strengthens him, and I'm like, that's so cool, because it's like it's about there's a relationship going on. He has feelings about it, and I'm like, I believe every character in here. I like that it's going like almost the opposite direction of more like dark stories, but still being brutal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too, without giving that away, what is giving this entity or whatever is possessing him power is also really refreshing.
Yeah, like
really
why
nice.
he was chosen. I'm like, oh,
yeah, it's kind of wholesome.
Yeah, and it's like it wasn't random, but it's not like, oh, was he like the special one who was like, no, like at the time.
Yeah, I thought that's where they were going, and I was like, oh, and then they like, oh no, that's not.
Yeah, like it. It does a lot of things, but it's not generic, and it's often like more like unpredictable because of like. Especially it's like, oh, like this is a weird combination that I have not seen of like, cherry blossoms and stuff while still having the aliens like cut people up.
Yeah, and that cliffhanger at the end of the first chapter, again, and I'll reiterate just because of how important and just special it felt to me to have this wife character just feel like I was emotionally as invested in her as I was him, just because he was the protagonist. Like, I was equally invested in both of them.
And like, this is the kind of story I think about when I'm like, oh yeah, like I've had like volumes to like this character and I don't. And it's like, I like this character after like 5 pages. And this is like real, like one of the best like written stories I've seen in a while.
And I hope it stays consistent. I hope with everything in me that it gets an official release and that people check this out.
Is it a spoiler to say why his name is Ottoman?
Oh, I was gonna say it. No, it's not.
Because that really sets you up for like understanding the charm of it.
Yes.
So like they put Otto means husband in Japanese, and then man means man, and they say that like so funny. It's like, oh, he's like, I guess I'm Ottoman, and she's like, yeah.
She's also like, can you
bomb?
I think we need an Ottoman.
Yeah,
she wanted an Ottoman,
and he made it a joke.
And he made it a joke, but it was like the punchline of the joke is that he's a good husband. It's sweet, and it's just does such a good job of letting you know what the tone is going to be.
But and it does enter the territory of like, okay, here's like these attacks, and we're gonna do training, we're gonna do all this stuff, and I liked every character that was introduced. You're introduced to like who you think is like, they're gonna be the gruff mentor. No, they're actually they're a cool person. You see like what they do in their free time, and it's like, oh, that's like quirky and charming, legitimately, like what that guy does. And you meet a scientist, like, oh, that's fun. And it's like, I didn't hit a note where I'm just like, oh, it's one of these things.
Yeah. Can't recommend it enough. If enough people decide to check this out, which I think we all highly recommend, and if you'd like to see us do a volume 1, a more in-depth review of X amount of chapters when they either officially are released or not, you can show us that you want to see more by liking this video. So if this video gets, we don't have to put a number on it, but if it gets to a certain amount of likes, we will take that as you telling us that you want to see more of this, and to see us talk more about it.
But this is a day 1 manga physical release buy for me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
As soon as it's out, I'm going to get that cover.
Yeah. I mean, the cover, if it's the same cover that was released that we saw online, which I will have put a picture up in post so you can see it as well, then yeah, I'm buying it too. But I think without giving too much away and just to give you a sense of everything.
Just to let you know that this is out there. And you definitely, please thumbs us up so it gets more attention. The
thumbs
manga
it up,
too.
Check it out. And you're going to kind of be getting ahead of the curve, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. By the time this comes out, you'll already know that you stumbled upon. Like, I was wrong about Candy Flory, but I don't
He's
think
saying it on the record.
I don't think I'm wrong. I really think this one has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it can contend, at least right now, with a Dandadan. I'm not saying that it is as good. I think Dandadan, to me, I like a little bit more.
I would put this in the category of a Kaiju number 8 type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Especially with like more adult, like morals, you know?
Yeah. So check it out. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of these shorter, reviews or, just sort of recommendations. And yeah, if we get enough likes on this video, then it's definitely something that we will do more of. Other than that, I think we're going to wrap it up. But remember that if you want to join our Patreon, you can always help us out, support us, and do that by going to patreon.com/volume1pod. Early access to all of our videos, access to our exclusive bonus Patreon podcast, Volume 1 Extra, and
you can join the algorithm gang where you can comment and do anything with thumbs up. What does that do, Megan?
It helps us out a lot with the algorithm. And then you can look at it as a tip. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can go to Volume 1 Pod on Instagram and Twitter and join our Discord as well.
And the Discord.
Links to all that down below. The only thing left to do now is to get out of here and our outro. It's always the same and never changes, which today is Ottoman. What a good manga.
Sure, we've done it before.
Thank you
yeah.
for
we don't have
time. Thank you for listening. And until next time,
Ottoman, what a good manga.
All right, we're done. We did it.